you can see the slant of the article just from the headline, that they're blaming the far right. They're blaming, well, anybody who's not far left. It's their fault. And it, it, the it's like, okay, well, you're hearing rhetoric. You're hearing rhetoric. Oh no, people are punching each other and punching the police, etc. Um, it's clear that they're pushing a rhetoric in the article which has not got so much stuff. I mean, this is from Musk, but the article, I was like, okay, Starmer was elected July last year and not due until 2029. Okay, well, I'm going to protect him. Okay, well, clearly the person writing this is in favour of Starmer, in favour of what Starmer's trying to do, feeling like objecting to the idea that a conservative stance is allowed to exist and have speech, and that, okay, these counterclaims, claims, counterclaims, it was more than 100,000, well more than 100,000. I don't think it was 3 million. 500,000, I could certainly agree to, but no, I don't. I think that's excessive just as much as that's under-reporting it. But there's no thought applied to this statement. It's meant to diminish what Robinson said in terms of the numbers and accept uncritically what the Met Police said. And it's like, well, hang on. There's a there's a reason for a difference, and when both sides are exaggerating, it takes away from the value of the argument. And this statement just basically says, oh no, it's only him exaggerating. Nah, my side's fine. No, we're good. The other thing that I see quite often in the reporting is they always seem to put his real name in, find some way to shoehorn it in. Everyone else is allowed to have that sort of stuff kept hidden. It 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 smells like it's an attempt not only to discredit, but keep people looking for him. And well, so he has served 5 prison terms, and well, okay, it's trying to paint this as something evil. But if you go and look at what his contempt of court case was, it was a political jailing. I think you don't have to be for or against him to realise it was a political jailing on a point of law. And it's like, yes, but it's almost like the lawfare that was tried against Trump before his 2024 election and was recently successful against Bolsonaro in Brazil. It's an attempt to say, like there was during the election in the US, of Trump being an X number of time convicted felon. Well, kind of not really. It's it was a very narrow reading of a law that was only created to personally target him, and so violated all sorts of rights under the so all sorts of constitutional rights, but was pushed through uh, as rushed and as possible, and still hasn't stood up to scrutiny, but allowed the narrative then to be pushed that he's an X number time felon. And yep, there's still people pushing that. So yeah, I mean, the alleged victim declined to make a statement, probably because he instigated it. But anywho, um, it's articles like this that just push through, and it's like larger than anticipated. Well, because the police didn't listen or underestimate it. They try to kettle them off away from their agreed upon march route, and allowed as you saw in the decoy voice video, allowed the counter protesters to close, or allowed them to close with counter protesters, and violence happened as a result. Now, the figures being put forward, you expect this to be underreported, that to be overreported. But, and this happened here in Australia too, with the recent protest and counter-protest last weekend, particularly down in Victoria. The protests on the left, or leftist protests or counter-protests, woefully underrepresented. An order of magnitude, several orders of magnitude smaller than the other protest. Two reasons, I think. One, people are feeling a chilling effect from what happened to Charlie Kirk and therefore afraid that the rhetoric they've been putting out is going to come back and bite them in the bum because they're now going to face consequences for things they've said and done. And two, because the actual support isn't there. Maybe it's time to step away from rhetoric there for a little bit and let the things cool off, or also because the baseline support just really isn't there, and that they rely on various means to get enough people to come and do things. So it's but there you go. Most of the violence appeared, so you go, there's a weasel word, appeared to come from the supporters among the far right, but there are also accounts of violence from counter protesters. Yeah, it's a slanted article, quite clearly. Then there's also Channel 9, clashes break out in protest organised by far-right activists. Okay, it's selling a narrative with words. There's many better ways to put that without antagonising. Being able to state fact without pushing a message. But this one says, well, it's people on the fringes of the parade. And, still only 25 people arrested, far less than the Palestinian protest the other week. But, yeah, you're looking at these low figures being reported. And the interesting thing is, the aerial footage you're seeing of the protest come from two sources. One, there was a Guardian helicopter up. The police helicopter apparently wasn't there, or somewhere else. But it may not have been ADSB reporting, potentially. The other one is a helicopter paid for by Tommy Robinson to basically ensure the extent of the protest was captured so that they could counter the narrative of, only 1,000 people turned up. Well, they have the aerial footage and you can work it out yourself, watch it through, do your own calculations based on density of human density per square metre during parades, protests, etc., and work out from there, which is why I think the actual figure is like 500,000 plus. But again, here we go. It's pushing this, we'll tie him to this. We're tying him to these more extreme positions. This adds nothing to the article, adds nothing to the fact of what went on, except to get people riled up. And it's still largely a peaceful protest. Well, there you go. It's claiming that it was far short of the pro-Palestinian March November 2023, which, well, immediately after October. Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay, so that was Channel 9 talking about it. And now you start looking at articles like this from SBS talking about hyper-connected nationalist groups fueling protests. It's like, well, people are using social media just like everyone else. They're being ignorant of the degree to which black bloc protesters, to which Antifa, to which professional left protesters, the protesting class, are using social media to organise and coordinate. They were doing this back in the summer of riots that the US went through after George Floyd's death. You listen to podcasts with protesters who were there about how they were coordinated, how socialist organisations and student movements and these sort of populist, even though that's become a bad word now, um, movements coordinated and exchanged information and got themselves. People have always had means by which movements are coordinated and information disseminated to encourage people to show up and things like this. Why are they surprised that this is happening amongst conservatives? Except because it now doesn't match what the media wants to see. It's now painted as something horrible. And again, rather than just saying Tommy Robinson, they've used inflammatory rhetoric to say who he is and what he's doing. Again, mainly English flag, like UK flags, a couple of English flags down the back there. And so the raise the colours, unite the colours, which is basically a rejection of leftist socialist rhetoric and attempts to dismiss not just nationalists but even dismiss citizen viewpoints. It's causing a lot of touch points, but here it's like slamming it as hateful. And it's like, well, a lot of people are just like, well, hang on. You can bring people in, you can do all this sort of stuff, but you've got to remember they're coming to the nation for a reason. They want to come to the nation. Don't kill off the nation merely to support, or you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. You're setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. This is not sustainable. And same discussion we had about these other rallies here in Australia recently. So it's, well, yes, the Reform Party has gained even more support. And so basically they're like, it's, there you go. That name shows up quite repeatedly in articles by SBS and other things about, well, he's an extremism researcher from Monash University. Having seen the standard of thought that comes out of Monash University online of people who identify themselves as researchers and professors and lecturers at Monash University, I'm not surprised that he's here talking about this sort of stuff and how he's labeling the far right with all this sort of behavior. It's, yeah. You scratch him, he's going to bleed red. Yeah. And then experts. What experts? Experts are just people you want to support your organisation. But yeah, look, it's just growing transnational links. Again, it's people using social media, people using the medias we have to communicate with each other. It's just, oh, I mean, he blames social media, but then again, he's a leftist himself. Of course, he's going to blame it. Does that mean everyone on the other side can blame the unions for him being prime minister, or blame his rhetoric? It's very one-sided, sadly, and this is not anywhere near the extreme of Australian media. This is just what passes for mainstream media, and it's sad. sad to see things like that, and the idea that, well, this is what is being pushed down to people to read and understand. And I mean, even the Sydney Morning Herald is, oh no, are we potentially going to face a right wing or conservative pushback? Concern, scary, it's all upsetting, and blah 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 blah. People scared of the idea that, well, how come Donald Trump got the support he did? People sort of are like, still don't understand why that's the case. They still refuse to accept that maybe the ideas they're pushing aren't as popular or as well received by the broader population as they think they are. They get sucked into this echo chamber of social media, which even when before Trump bought Twitter, was accepted to be, well, not just an echo chamber, but the reflection of a minority of users who are a minority of the population. Not a minority within the population in terms of an identifiable minority and therefore needing support, but in terms of the number of users on with accounts, the number of active users is a small portion of the overall number, and within the percentage of active users, only a very small portion carry most of the weight of noise being generated. Right. So people misrepresent, therefore look at what's going on and go, oh, well, that's carrying far more weight. It's misunderstanding reality. And the fact is, when you go to the polls, it's not the Twitter users that determine your policy, it's all the electors, all the electorate. And they're not listening to that. No, they listen to the mainstream media. So, yeah, there's this whole thing here about they're they're painting it as, well, racist, as the idea that you're struggling to support unchecked migration. There was an article that talked about, oh no, we can't say it's because of reframing refugees as asylum seekers. It's like, wait. When the boats were coming in with people on board, they were asylum seekers. They were people who were seeking asylum in Australia as protection, under protection as a refugee. But they weren't refugees at that point because the IOM, well, the IOM knew about them, but Australia had not been able to process their claims for refugee status and therefore had no ability to declare in advance that the people on these boats were bona fide refugees. As it turned out, quite a few weren't. And that they were going to displace capacity from the existing refugee allocation from people who'd already been deemed refugees in refugee camps scattered across the world. And so it's unfair to all those other people. And then people later on, it's like, oh no, you're being mean to these people in the boats. Well, they're being disrespectful to everybody else who's already a designated refugee that we now can't bring in. And it's like, oh, you're mean. You've said they're racist because you said they're asylum seekers. Well, at that point in time, they are asylum seekers. They are until such time that their claims can be processed. That's the hard truth. It's not being racist. Still going to process them and see what their claims are. You're not going to just throw them back. Well, some people talk about turning back the boats. Kind of was that, but yeah, it's uh at least they're willing to admit that the mainstream parties are being unpopular and are facing pushback by the um, populace. But now they're saying that, well, the rise of Donald Trump was because of the media. It's like, where were you from 2015 onwards? Have you not paid any attention to, well, you're part of the media. You know this to be a lie. It's like they're willfully ignoring what, yeah, deep breath. It's just, oh, I really don't know how people can continue to make unfounded claims like this and not have any form of, not consequence, because that would imply some sort of physical outcome, which it shouldn't be, but it, well, consequence for their own actions, of pushback on their rhetoric, of either facing their own. Obviously, the last couple of weeks has very much influenced how societal interaction goes, but it's just one of these things that it's, how do you deal with it? It's like blaming the media for Donald Trump. The only media, mainstream, roughly mainstream media, that even remotely supported Trump in the lead up to his first term was Fox. And that was because he was the Republican candidate at the time. But since then, Fox has turned their back on him as well to a reasonable extent. There's still shows on there that support him and people there that support him. But the amount of hateful rhetoric that came down from every other mainstream media source and then parroted by media around the world. And they're like, oh no, it's the media's fault that Trump got in. I think somebody needs to go for a cognitive impairment check. I. No, no. It's. Uh, this idea that we're going to refuse an Aussie demagogue, I don't see that. We've had very strong characters come through as prime ministers or political leaders over time. Uh, we've had people like Howard and Keating and Hawke. They've all been very strong characters that, well, coalesced the nation around them. Tall poppy syndrome. Well, Keating is probably the one that survived that. Houston didn't survive it. I mean, even at the state level, Dan Andrews more recently. Um, Bob Carr was a pretty good example out of New South Wales, where you've got, oh, I mean, Sydney Lord Mayor, Lord Clover, the Clover Moore has hung on forever. You do have these characters in Australian politics that stand out. Now, whether or not we'll get to a point that you'll have such a strong mouthpiece. I mean, Albanese at the moment is one such thing. He's, yeah, I find this, well, people complaining about Pauline Hanson coming into politics. Oh no, it's scary. A populist tremor. See, here we go. People on the left complaining about the fact that there are populist ideals, that populism is bad, that the will of the masses is the wrong thing. And they say they're not authoritarian. It's, yeah, insane. Insane. Definitely don't want to read the comments on that one. Um, is that the article I just clicked on? Yes, that is the one I just looked at. Okay, but that said, it's then followed up by another one. The dangerous logic behind the killing of Charlie Kirk. Okay, well, what's this article about? Is this about saying online rhetoric is bad? No, no. How do you open with a statement like that? How do we open with that? Yes, people have claimed for the last several years that the rhetoric after Trump got elected or before Trump got elected, it's like, yeah, he's a polarizing character, but what has happened? people have been able to go there and spout horrible hate and not see the consequence. And ah, it's, well, this guy says quite clearly that he's opposed to Charlie Kirk on pretty much everything. Um, yeah, there's a clear justification. This guy needs to have people provide him alternate viewpoints at the same level. Yeah, okay, there was that degree of some engravings where, okay, this singles out, yep, the Helldivers 2 reference, but completely ignores the Bella Ciao, I think that's the one, the very, very clear anti-fascist statements, regalia, paraphernalia associated with everything. No, 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 no. We're going to pretend that we don't know what's going on, because to otherwise admit it would be to recognise the weaknesses in our own arguments, would be to recognise that maybe someone carried out violence on our behalf because of what we've said. It's no, no, no. This guy has not had enough people tell him no in his life. It's and this misrepresents what happened then either. It wasn't a case of compiling lists of enemies. It's compiling a list of people who reacted with joy to his passing, who reacted as if it was morally right that he was assassinated. They weren't compiling a list of enemies. It was to basically show the people that these people worked for that there was hatred, political hatred, and violent rhetoric amongst these organisations and people. That it was basically demonstrating the fact that the broader society is not as hateful and rhetoric filled as these people online are. That, well, maybe reporting them to their workplace is like, okay, fine, workplaces, yeah, no, that's completely okay. That's allowed under the under the First Amendment. You don't have to do business with us, and we don't have to do business with you. Carry on with your life. No, none of that happened. Nope, 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 nope. Nope. And it was, as I said previously, it was a pushback on this idea that you had people who were rejecting the COVID lockdowns and everything that were being targeted and criticised with the same viewpoints of, oh, right, well, you don't have to be fired, you don't have to work if you don't want to get your jab. Okay, well, you don't have to work if you want to be gleefully reveling in the assassination of somebody you disagreed with politically. There's not even a dignity in death for them. It again, it's a generation of people. It's a lot of people coming through who have seemingly forgotten how to behave in society. That there are certain societal laws that exist for a reason. But no, no, no. When do the good guys maintain blacklist? That's the point. You've never been the good guys. Oh, no. That sounds like you could have a bit of awareness and waking up to the reality of things. Nope, 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 nah, nah, And that was, I think, one of the things that came out of October the 7th, 2023, is that people who were protesting suddenly found themselves in a dichotomy. Who do I protest more for? Do I protest for the guys that flew across the border on paragliders and killed people who had nothing, well, define how you say nothing to do with things, and kill people where they stood, or do I support the people who were then killed? Well, it's clear which side they came down on, the one that's more Marxist. But it's just it was interesting for about a week because you had people pushing, and the organisations that often pushed protesters and pushed supported protests and things like that were found to have financing that advocated one side more than the other, and people disagreed with that, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle in the realm of the professional protest class. So it's no, no, no. This guy, okay, uncomfortable conversations. I don't think he even thinks it's. He's showing no idea. Regularly rapid views that will challenge, champion it. No, it doesn't he champions his own viewpoints, doesn't inform, doesn't challenge. It's just no. The guy is delusional and deranged. Again, angering up the blood. All right, a couple more things. We're going to forget about the climate risk assessment, which is we talk about authoritarian, more government control. They published a recent thing here in Australia about, oh no, our avocados are going away. They've done various temperature rise forecasts, not just the scientists, but there were politicians and focus groups involved, which means that it's now going to be bad science. And quite clearly, it is a vehicle by which to secure more money from the public and push it into things that special interests. No, wrong way to go about it. Sorry. Sorry to say, but yeah, we'll come back to, well, I'm sure we'll cover that at some point. I don't think that's going to go on. That'd be uh, disappearing again. All right. So yeah, now there's the occasional article talking about the actual outcomes from people who had the rhetoric of, look, yep, fair enough. Now it's the organisation's fairly saying, what's a nice Gulf stream in the background? That okay. The type of speech you have online can be drawn back to your organisation, to who you work for, and a lot of people sort of forget how easy it is to link that. They're not using proper anonymity. I mean, they feel emboldened because no one's called them to account for it before, and now that people are being called to account for um, celebrating assassination, for engaging in abhorrent behaviour, and it really shouldn't matter what side of the spectrum or where you are on the spectrum, now that we've talked about changing the spectrum, it's yeah, it's like finally being called to account for the things you've said, and it's world ending. Again, we go back to, like I said, the people who fought back against the COVID lockdowns and overreaches that took place were slandered. I mean, at the time, I thought that going through the COVID experience, and I know I'm not the only person who've said this or thought this, but beforehand, you had the whole, how could Nazism have been allowed to rise like it did in Germany? Where were the common people that said no? I would never allow that to happen if I lived there. All this sort of thing. Okay. And it was like, all right, well, let's hope we never have to test that. Along comes COVID. And it is amazing how quick people were to don the jackboot of authority, of authoritarianism. And the idea that people are sheep, I I still don't like that construct. But there were certainly lots of people who went along with it because authority told them to, or because the authority that they believed in told them to. And a lot of these people were the ones that said I would never allow Nazism to arise, or I would never have done this. And it's like, well, stop lacing up your boots for half a second. Get them off the neck of somebody who is standing up against this very, very authoritarian action that's about to happen or is happening, and question, is there a better way of doing it? And it's like, well, there was that rush to comply. People obviously want to be part of the tribe. People want to be part of the society, want to be part of the community. But that doesn't mean rushing to. I mean, the amount of propaganda that led to it. It's like it's. I'm sure at some point it's going to be a classic. There'll be lots of papers and books written about how the population was led or not led into accepting things that should never have happened. And people say, well, it would never have happened in the 21st century. The difference is you're not wearing a Hugo Boss uniform, but you're running with abhorrent authoritarianism quite willingly. And and then they targeted people who stood against it, who spoke against it. And so, yeah, and then everyone kind of forgot about it and pretended that they were never that horrid. Yeah, there is pushback, quite reasonable and expected pushback. Um, and they're talking as well about, yeah, more about political violence. Okay, who's this Muppet? They are no byline, but again, painting the rhetoric, pushing statements, and it's like, okay, so they push as a counterexample the Minnesota Democrats who were killed, ignoring the fact that it was somebody who claimed to have been appointed by Tim Walz and be associated with him, and the fact that the Democrats targeted had aligned themselves with Minnesota Republicans on a recent bill in opposition to their own party. So, taking that context, it looks more like an assassination targeted. It looked like a targeted killing because they left the reservation because they went against the party. But to accept that narrative breaks down, or to accept the facts breaks down the narrative of, oh, it's a right wing this, even though there was next to no evidence to imply that the person was a right wing assassin. Yep. This was, I think, possibly a Democrat. I think it was to do with, it's a pro-Palestinian protester, I believe. I'd have to double check that one. Yep, Donald Trump once being hit, and the second time they caught the guy. Then obviously there was so two leftists. The guy Luigi, leftist, although hatred of the U.S. health insurance system is universal, but mainly leftist. This one, Nancy Pelosi's husband, that's a weird one. There was a lot of misdirection and misinformation still out there. It it still seems like a bit of a stretch to imply that there was a political aspect to it. And well, the reporting still seems to imply that there was he was the target, not her. So this was an FBI sting, completely set up. That insane leftist. That I honestly don't know that one. I mean, I know the instance. I don't know the shooter in that particular case. Okay, they've tried to tie January 6th in, conveniently ignoring all the other occupations of Congress, the House of Congress, or the building, by political protest before and after. I mean, within 2 weeks before and after, there are photos of people doing a sit-in the office of the Speaker, and the Speaker standing there celebrating them because she supported their ideology. So, yeah, I think it's people. Again, it goes back to what I said. Why these public figures now are like a bit of a chilling effect, because somebody engaged in the most moderate of approaches was targeted and killed. And compared to the rhetoric they push, now being a US politician has always been a bit of a dangerous occupation. It's just, yeah, but I mean, they're just focusing on government. Um, yeah, the Kennedys, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Harvey Milk, um, the judges that were killed on their doorsteps and their families recently, based on, that was only like a year or so back. Um, there was another couple as well that, and that's ignoring all the school shooting and other mass killings in the US. Uh, um, well, Reagan was shot. Uh, the Pope was shot. It's just like the motivating factors back then seemed to be, well, while people might have had shared intent or shared the ideology, it seems that the ability to share those ideologies and intent in safe spaces, in echo chambers, is far easier nowadays. And as a result, somebody who is able to or willing to take the next step and turn violence in political speech into political violence is in a much easier situation now. Oh, so the other thing, Weather Underground, Digital Underground. Digital Underground is a rap group. Weather Underground, they bombed the US Senate, and Bill Clinton pardoned one of them as part of his outgoing things. And then she got involved with BLM. So there's a direct link to political violence and the BLM movement. But people look past that and look the other way because that didn't agree with the narrative that was being sold at the time. Yeah, we should have. Well, we're getting distracted here. So it's just insane. You are you are shaming him. You are victim blaming. I mean, this is a very ironic statement that came out of Charlie Kirk about the fact that if you're going to support the Second Amendment, that you do have to accept that there is going to be a degree of gun-related deaths that will accompany it, sadly. And the fact that he died to gun violence himself, yeah, okay. He also said a lot of other things. I mean, we could put up other quotes and say that they were just as definable, but yeah, it's uh, it's yeah. And then there was another, yep, there was a shooting at the high school in Colorado, etc. But it's interesting to see though that in this they've missed the violent case that captured the internet's attention, or at least certain commentators' attention, which was the death of the Ukrainian refugee Arinya, violently at the hands of an assailant in Charlottesville for completely, appearingly, seemingly completely out of the blue. And the horrid example given of the bystander effect and how long it took before somebody actually provided aid. She was pretty much cold on the floor at that point. And so it's one thing to pretend and look one way and say, oh, it's all the violence is coming from this direction, it's this type of violence, and ignoring it just ugh. Both sides are at fault. Both sides are at fault. Both sides are at fault. Um, well, oh yeah, Trump answered too soon. No, it was pretty well understood. I mean, you'd have to draw an awfully long bow to explain in the immediate aftermath why you'd suspect a conservative to have shot Charlie Kirk, other than the fact you're in Utah, a fairly relatively conservative state. No, no, no. And yeah. Oh, now here we are towards the end of the article. It's like, oh, well, maybe some bad things got said. Oh, bad us. That's the whole reason for the reaction that's there, for crying out loud. Oh, you've spent the rest of the article, oh, it's both sides are at fault. Both sides say bad things. But only one side shot someone because of it. And then immediately danced on the grave that hadn't even been dug. And you don't understand why there's pushback. You don't understand why there is a feeling from others that you are not behaving in a manner fit for society. It just. Now, that guy's a bit of a scary person, but yeah. I'd said before, he's the scary person standing behind Trump. When people say Trump's going to be a dictator and everything else, Stephen Miller is the guy that they should be afraid of. Now, he's not going to stand he's not going to take over from Trump or anything like that, but he's got Trump's ear. And when people say, oh, the big scary things that Trump wants to do, it's this sort of guy. All right. only a couple more things. Yeah, okay, last one on this. This is, and we just finished having an article saying, oh, both sides at fault. Oh, some people did it, but not many. A mental health advocate saying it's not wrong to laugh about Charlie Kirk becoming a human water fountain. Okay, well, quite clearly they've seen what took place or had enough people tell them what took place. The fact they're a mental health advocate, okay, it's just, how does it get to the point that this is seen as acceptable, irrespective of whether you think you agree with the person who did it or who was assassinated? There is a certain degree of human decency, dignity in death. It Again, people who've never received pushback, been told no, or listened to people who said no, never received pushback on their ideas before, or had to answer to the consequences of what they've said or done, or even seen consequences for what they've said or done. And it's like, I don't know how this is morally justified unless you lack morals altogether. How you would fit into a society, how you fit into a community, what community forms around people who hold these sort of views. It, it, it is something I mean, I try and see how other people come to their opinions. Well, the only way I can see them coming to their opinion is by being completely illogical, I guess, completely it's the antithesis of caring. It's just, uh, it is. It is wrong. It is unethical. And it is unkind to laugh at the misfortunes of others, whether or not you think they're terrible people or not. And that he did not, again, this whole him inciting violence, you go and look at and this is the problem. People take snippets and ignore the context. And this goes back to one of the things I said previously about when Trump was, about the media handling Trump and taking extracts of snippets of out of context. So when he was feeding the koi fish with Shinzo Abe, and the media lambasted him for tipping the remaining food into the koi pond. And it's like, oh, Trump overfeeding the fish and damaging the fish. Well, the broader context and the missing context, which is not even 30 seconds prior, was Shinzo Abe doing the exact same thing and showing Trump, basically, Trump followed Shinzo's actions all the way through. So he followed the actions of his host. But no, nope, nope. It was Trump being abusive to animals. Okay? The people who then say Charlie Kirk incited violence are people who either very heavily misinterpret his words, take his position on things as being, and again, taking it out of the context of what he said. So, for example, when Charlie Kirk said that he personally did not agree with um, people being gay, did not mean that he did not support them. He did not um, hate the sin, so love the sinner, hate the sin. It's the embodiment of that. He didn't want to see people eradicated. He didn't want to see the population gotten rid of. He was very much vocally against abortion. And he tried to get people he was debating with to come to their own conclusions on things. But he wasn't going to walk over there and stop you from, like, physically stop you from doing things. He wasn't going to physically beat you if you were gay. It's this idea that he incited violence is a complete misrepresentation of everything he ever said. Now, yeah, okay, he has said things that people might can possibly interpret that way, but it's a very poor reading of the situation. If you're going to see that in those sort of statements, I fear for your life in modern society because you're going to see microaggressions around every corner. You can't survive on your own in modern society because somebody saying hello to you is an aggression. No, no. People like that need to go and get their mental faculties tested. Um, well, it is. You just said right up here, it is not wrong or unethical or unkind to laugh at the misfortunes of terrible people. And then said, oh, it's got nothing to do with that. It has. You just said that. Like 2 sentences before. Well, in the article. Now, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Yes, very good book. Um, uh, I prefer it. Well, written by a written about it's recommended to people who suffer from PTSD, and it's written by an Austrian, I believe he was Austrian, I might have got this wrong, Austrian psychiatrist who spent at least part of the Second World War in a camp and walked out of it at the end of the war and went back to practice in Vienna, I think. Well, back into private practice. And he talked about in the book what it was that allowed people to survive in the camps and about like what it was that got people to survive. Now, Viktor Frankl's story is really interesting. It's given what we've been told about how bad the camps were, how does one walk out of that and immediately go back to private medical practice? Surely he was suffering from massive traumas and everything else. Or there were camps where the experience wasn't that bad. But that then starts leading down the path that leads to people being Holocaust deniers. But the point being, Viktor Frankl wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, and it's a good book. And it's one of the better books that is recommended for people suffering from PTSD. And the discussion of what allowed people to survive in the camps and what didn't is completely valid. I mean, that is completely true, what happened. I just find it very odd that he was able to walk out and immediately go back to practice when he didn't necessarily seem to be the person to have. I mean, he obviously had robust mental defenses and mental toolboxes to deal with the stresses and traumas and stuff. But yeah, there's a question to be raised there of how did that happen? But anyway, it is. But I think that's probably the wrong takeaway to take from the book. And then, after being criticised for her viewpoints, allowed to continue. If you're upset about the situation, you could have done something to stop this happening. Yeah, well, people are. People are trying to get you to stop your rhetoric. They're trying to do something to stop it happening again because they've said that the call to violence came from a call to violence, from speech, from people ignoring the humanity of each other. But no, blaming the victim. What was it up here? Not victim blame? No, that was the other article. No, blaming the victim. It's his fault. It's his fault. He shouldn't have debated with people. He shouldn't have had ideas that are opposite of mine or of different political slant to mine. It wouldn't have happened if he didn't abuse people. If this person thinks talking to people is abuse, again, I feel for them in modern society. I don't know how they're going to survive without considering everything to be an aggression. And it's no, you're like his children are not in a worse position. His views about children were not good. Yep, and they've shown the moment of his death. Great, that didn't need to be in there. Lived experience workforce training project and a mental health advocate on NDIS information support. Oh, my camera has camera's given up. I am still here. Okay, well, that's given up the ghost. Let's turn off the VTuber for the last little bit then. Again, there's just another reason why I find Victoria to be a strange state. Yeah. And then she's condemned people for contacting a former employer. Bullying and harassment are criminal offences. So what is it you've just said and talked about? Disliking someone's jokes or opinions does not entitle you to harass them or the organisations connected to them. Well, I'm sorry, lady, you're disliking someone's opinions that you don't deserve a job. That's not debate, it's not accountability. No, you are being targeted. Not targeted. People are seeking your accountability because of what you've said. And then you've tried to repeat what should be the place and then ignored it. It's like, why? No, you're not holding yourself to a higher standard. And uh, ethics, psychoanalysis, and a decolonial thought can reshape our approaches to care, justice, and human dignity. You've already told me you're radically left already. I don't need to know more. Oh, boy. It's. Why? Why did they even have to put this in an article? Why?